Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Mike Francesa podcast on the Bet Rivers Network, brought to you by Casamigos Tequila. Casamigos Tequila is brought to you by those who drink it. We come to you this evening as we dig a little deeper into the NCAA tournament on the Mike Francesa channel, on the Bet Rivers Network, on YouTube. The day after is always one where, there's just mounds and mountains of analysis. Obviously, there is this whole North Carolina thing, which to me is really overdone. Um, I don't think it's an outrage. I know West Virginia is going to open an investigation with the governor and the attorney general and everybody else they can marshal together to get the job done. It wasn't like West Virginia was an outstanding team. I don't see much difference uh, among the whole group of teams when I look at them as a group, whether it's West Virginia, Indiana, Ohio State, North Carolina. Utah State, I'd put in that same group. I don't see a whole lot of difference among any of those teams. And remember, two things which I have not seen brought up anywhere. Number one, there are very few college basketball teams that are brands. North Carolina is a brand. North Carolina is the fabric of the sport. The uniform is the fabric of the sport. No one ever expects a North Carolina team. I remember this team was ranked highly at the start of the season. And yes, they played a brutal schedule and they lost all their big games. But remember this, and this is something that I think has not been taken into account, and that's the human element. That committee, bored having been together for days, sat around and watched Carolina without Flag, obviously. But they watched Duke build a 21-point lead, and I'm sure they were all saying, wow, look how impressive Duke is. Wow, look at this performance. And then they watched North Carolina in the second half throw away a game that they could have won when they were down 21 points. So they came back 21 points in the second half on Duke, and they did it in front of the committee's eyes. I gather a few of those guys were probably impressed by what they saw there. It's just human nature. I remember a year where it was Purdue went in, was a solid 2, let's say. I don't remember if they were a 1 or they were a 2, whatever and they got destroyed on the weekend in a tournament game. I mean, beat by 35 points. They dropped 2 lines because the committee's sitting there saying, "Hey, I can't put this team up there." Sometimes that game that they see, they ignore a lot of the games because they want to get the bracket done. And there comes a point where they close the book on an Auburn or close the book on a Duke or close the book on a Houston on the positive side and say, you know what, I don't need to see anymore. They've done their body of work. Auburn lost 3 of their last 4 and still was the number 1 team in the tournament. Why? Because they had a great season. And a bad couple of days was not going to impact them. Now, do I think they should have been 1? No. I actually think 2 things. One, if you feel Cooper Flag is going to be healthy, and it sounds like he is, then Duke should be the overall 1. And if not, I think Florida was the overall 1. I think they've been the most impressive team for the last 2 months. I think going into the tournament, and I said this to you last night, the 3 most impressive teams going into the tournament over the last 5 or 6 weeks have been Florida, Houston, and St. John's. And this year, because of the injuries to Iowa State, to Texas Tech, to Illinois, and now to Alabama, The fall off, excluding Alabama, which is a 2, obviously, the fall off was the top 7 teams, and I'm gonna dismiss Alabama for a second because of the injury. The fall off after the 7 teams is stark. Alabama deserves to be in that group. Iowa State deserves to be in that group, but Iowa State's gonna play shorthanded, and Alabama's most likely gonna play shorthanded. Texas Tech's gonna play shorthanded. Illinois, I don't know. They've had so many different lineups all year and guys in and out of the lineup all year, it's hard to keep track of it. That's why their play has been so erratic up and down. But when you get down and look at those things and try and separate them, I don't see a whole lot of difference. Here's the way I look at it. This is the way I would do it. I put North Carolina and West Virginia on a neutral floor. Who wins? I think it's a toss-up. I don't think that West Virginia blows them away. I'm gonna be surprised if North Carolina. You say, "Well, that's not how you do it." Yeah, that's how you do it. You're asking who is the better team. Their performances, one was good against one category, one was good against the other category. They lined up, about the same over the multiple categories. There's nothing to choose from there. It's not anything outrageous. And the fact that North Carolina gets in the tournament should not ever surprise anybody. They are North Carolina. They are basketball royalty, just like Kentucky is, just like Duke is, just like UCLA is. They have earned historically the benefit of the doubt. They are just a dominant factor just by the uniform and by the culture. And I don't think, listen, if North Carolina goes out and loses by 10 in their game, who cares? It doesn't prove anything. Anything can happen on one night. If they go out and win by 20, it doesn't prove that they had to be in the tournament. But it's not that big a deal. Now, the other thing, which didn't get a lot of attention, was just how weak they made the East. I mean, there's no question about it. Would I love St. John's to be in the East? I love them to be in the East. But they're not. They're in the bracket with, I think, right now, what is the second worst team for that? I think for them to play right now. The second. I think the worst team for them to play would be Houston. Why? Because Houston's a much better defensive team than Florida's. Florida's a terrific team. Their bigs kill them on the offensive glass. Their 3 guards are the best trio of guards in the country. But St. John's, I want to see St. John's play there. I hope I get a chance to see this because St. John's going up against any offense has a puncher's chance. What you worry about them is their very vulnerable offense being shut down completely by a team that plays great defense, handcuffing defense, and kills you on the boards, which is what Houston does. I think the worst matchup in the country for St. John's would be Houston. Not Duke, not Auburn, not Florida. Although I do say that I think Florida has been the most impressive team. The second best team, I think, has been Houston. And I think Houston's got a great chance this year. Great chance. I mean, if they play Tennessee in a regional final, would that be a great game? Yes, it'd be a slugfest. And the key to that game, a lot of it will be officiating because a lot of guys are going to get in foul trouble. And how St. John's games are officiated are going to be imperative. Absolutely imperative. Because the games are usually tighter than the conference games are called. And St. John's, they are very physical. They are very handsy. They're going to try and reach and steal. They're going to try and reach and flip. They do a lot of back taps. They do a lot of different things to try to steal the ball. And they can get called for some of that stuff. But they are playing terrific basketball right now, although the 2 vulnerabilities are still there. The 3-point shot and obviously the foul shooting of Zuby, who did have an 11 for 12 game in his 33-point masterpiece, and Richmond, who scares the heck out of you because he's going to have the ball in his hands and just does not make free throws and doesn't even look good trying. Now, the first thing when you start is you look at who's favored to win. Now, remember, when you look at this thing, St. John's is discounted in an actual one because if you're going to have one that you can actually play in New York on a, you know, on a computer or on a phone, St. John's is not in it. So that's the one I give you because that's actual. You got to travel to get the one St. John's is in, or use the friendly neighborhood guy. Okay, now Duke is. I'll give you the Bet Rivers one, just an example. And St. John's, of course, is not in it. Now Duke is 3-1. Florida is 370-1. So those are the two heaviest favorites. Auburn is 5-1. Houston is 7-1. After that, it jumps up all the way to 20-1. So the move from Duke to Florida to Auburn to Houston, and then you go into the 20s, into the 30s, with obviously the usual suspects. You can line them all up in pretty much order. I was surprised Iowa State was actually getting the support it did, considering the injuries it has. Um, if you're looking for UConn, they're 120-1. I know there's a lot of people who don't follow this closely and think, "Oh man, how bad is it that you got to play UConn in an 8-9?" Hey, UConn is not UConn of the last 2 years. UConn is going to have a tough game with a very well coached Oklahoma team. Okay, and then they are going to play Florida, and they are going to get, I think, their doors blown off. Why? Because they don't play defense. And if you don't play defense in Florida, Florida's going to make you look bad. And UConn does not play quality defense. That's all there is to it. They are not a good defensive team this year. Their offense can still click. Their defense is not there. It's just, listen, forget 3 in a row. Listen, they made the tournament. They're not the same team. They lost a bundle of talent. They lost 2 guys who were drafted at the top of the draft. It's just the way it is. I mean, they lost 4 starters, and Caravan hasn't been the same player. He's a role player who was asked to be more than that. He didn't do it, and he hasn't been very good this year, to be honest with you. He's had a disappointing season. So, we're a day away tomorrow night, the playing games. Thursday, we get it all going. St. John's is going to be playing late Thursday night in Providence. I will give you all the first round odds. I'll run through them. I'll run through the games for you with the up to date odds. Tomorrow night you have St. Francis of PA. Remember, there's St. Francis, New York, St. Francis, Pennsylvania. Against Alabama State. Alabama State's a 4-point favorite. 3.5, 4 goes back and forth. Then Carolina is a 4.5-point favorite over San Diego State. San Diego State has played very well in this tournament, and they're well coached. Wednesday, you have Mount St. Mary's, which beat Iona in the conference finals. They're an underdog to American. American's a 2.5-point favorite. I think American wins that game. And then Xavier is a 3.5-point favorite over Texas. Xavier came in. I thought they deserved to get in. I understand they were 1-9 in quad one. Hey, there's so many numbers now. These guys at the committee are looking at 7 different metrics for each team. It's too much. They're supposed to be basketball experts. They should come in with a preconceived notion with the work they've done before they sit there that week and know what teams are good and what teams are not. And they should know Xavier played really well down the stretch of the season and lost a really tough game in the Big East Conference tournament. Lost a heartbreaker, a 2-point heartbreaker. Well, really, it was a very close game. They led it most of the way. Marquette got up 5, and then they hit a prayer, which covered the point spread, which was a bomb as the game ended, which took it down to 2 points. But it was a very close game all the way. Thursday, you have Creighton and Louisville in the 8-9 game. Louisville's favored by 3. I think Creighton's going to be a very tough matchup. I think Creighton was exhausted on Saturday, but St. John's is better. But Creighton's a good team. I think their point guard with some rest will shoot better. Obviously, they have a center who's been a 4-time defensive player of the year in the Big East and who, can score in the low box. Purdue had a great year last year. Their center is in the NBA. They're an 8-point favorite over High Point. High Point's one of the darlings. They're getting a lot of play. If you're looking for one of those 13-4s, that game is going to be on everybody's upset list. I don't think there's any question about it. Everyone's in love with High Point. Montana in the 14-3 game gets Wisconsin. Wisconsin's a 17.5-point favorite. Wisconsin is hot and cold shooting the ball. But while this line is high, I don't think Montana pulls off an upset. And then Houston is a typical 1 favorite, 28.5 points. Auburn, of course, is waiting for a playing game. And then McNeese, Clemson. We all know the saga of the 12-5 game. Clemson is a 7.5-point favorite here. Clemson, to me, is not a 5. They're better than that. This is not your typical 12-5 game. I don't see an upset here because I don't think Clemson's a legitimate 5. I think they are closer to a 3 than they are a 5. I think they have not gotten the attention they deserve. They are a very good team. They just don't have a lot of depth, like Maryland. VCU, BYU, everybody's picking VCU, which scares you because when everybody's picking the same upset, you got to be careful. That's an 11-6 game. BYU's a 3.5-point favorite. There's not a lot in any of those games. You're never surprised. Whether it's 8, 9, 7, 10, 6, 11, you're not surprised by pretty much anything. But everybody's on VCU. The VCU coach is highly upwardly mobile. He's being mentioned at Villanova. He's being mentioned at Virginia. A lot of people think he might be pretty far along at Virginia. He's one of the hot coaches right now. He's going to get a job out of this tournament. Win there wouldn't surprise anybody. Georgia Gonzaga is an 8-9 game, okay? But what the odds maker is telling you is we don't buy that this is an 8-9 game. Most 8-9 games are pick 'em, 1, 1.5. All right? Even 3 is pretty high for an 8-9 game. Gonzaga is a 6-point favorite in an 8-9 game. That's a substantial number. That's a surprising number. That's a number that tells you that they don't think Gonzaga is an 8. Now, they're Gonzaga. Again, they have, they came into the tournament 25, 30 years ago, and they built this reputation as being giant killers. And then they became, a standard. They went from being 9 seeds and 10 seeds to being 1 seeds. This year they're in the 8-9 game. Georgia's had some big wins, including a win over St. John's, but that win was at the end of St. John's playing in the tournament down there. They played a game in the Bahamas against Georgia, on a Sunday before they left town to come home, and it was probably the worst game they played all year, or one of them. And they still had a chance to win it at the end. Wofford plays Tennessee, different level of player. Tennessee's an 18.5 point favorite. 18 is a standard 215 number. And then you have Arkansas and Kansas. Arkansas, as the 10, is getting healthier. Calipari got them better late in the season. They played much better towards the end of the season. Kansas has never gotten it going all year. Kansas is favored in the game. Now, I got to admit, I thought this game would be closer to. I understand it's Kansas, but I wouldn't be surprised at all if Arkansas wins, even a little. So I think getting the points, Arkansas is a good play there. I think they, which would set up Patino, Calipari, which would be a lot of fun in Providence. Yale versus Texas A&M. A lot of people like Yale because they're rugged. They can shoot the ball. They're a tough team, but A&M is not a good team to play against. They are a really tough group, and they are a team that throws it up and then goes and gets it off the backboard repeatedly. If Yale could shut their board down, they'd have a chance. I just don't know if they can do that. That's a tough matchup for Yale. Really is. That's a good for A&M. They're a good team. I mean, they beat Auburn just a couple of weeks ago. Drake, Missouri. Missouri's got ability. We know that they have athletes. Okay. Drake is one of the darlings of this year with that kind of mid-major team. Plus, their coach is hotter than Georgia asphalt. Okay. McCollum, he's not going to impact the East. He won, I believe it's 4 national championships in Division II. He brought a lot of his guys with him to Drake this year and won 30 games. Won the league, won the conference tournament. He's won 30 games. He's got one really terrific player that they run everything around, and they play a system. They play really slow. They execute brilliantly. They run. If you want to see Hoosiers, this is Hoosiers. Okay, this is a team that's going to run beautiful sets. Is going to play slow. Is going to bore Missouri to tears. Now, unless Missouri just overwhelms them with their athleticism, but I don't see Drake getting overwhelmed. McCollum's going to be one and out at Drake. The logical place is Iowa. First of all, he's from Iowa. So that's the logical place. As Iowa goes shopping for a coach, it's a good program to run. I could see him. He probably covets that job. Now, if I'm Indiana, this is the guy I want to talk to also. So I would think, but if I had to guess right now and you said to me, put him in a job next year, I'd put him in Iowa. Drake is a 6.5 point underdog. They're going to get a lot of action. A lot of action. I'll be picking them in the first round. I'll be picking them to win this game. I was picking Drake unless they played somebody that I just absolutely hated the matchup. I was picking Drake 2 weeks ago. So I've been on Drake for months. They've been really an interesting team. Utah State, UCLA, everybody's picking Utah State. I have too much respect for Cronin. I would not pick against UCLA in this spot. I wouldn't go near this. I know everyone loves Utah State. You're going to see them picked everywhere. UCLA is a 5.5 point favorite. They're not a great team, okay, but they're dangerous in the 7-10 game. And I think Cronin has showed you he's a really good coach in these spots. I've heard rumors about him coming east and taking the Villanova job. I don't know that he's going to leave UCLA. I don't know that. Plus, I don't know if he's the guy that, and this is no knock on him. I've known him for a million years, okay, and he's a terrific coach. But I don't know if they're looking for someone that they could maybe keep a long time longer, who's younger. I don't know what they want to do. At Villanova, you're hearing Richard Pitino, you're hearing the VCU coach, you're hearing the Northwestern coach. Um, I have heard Cronin. I'm not sure I know what's going to happen. I don't know if anyone does yet. That's a very attractive job, though. Hey, it's much easier to go in when you're replacing a legend like Jay Wright. It's much easier to be the second guy in rather than the first guy in. The first guy in just took 3 years of abuse. He didn't get in the NCAA tournament any of the 3 years. He got run out of town. The alums there are not going to sit for not going to the NCAA tournament. They build their whole year around going to the NCAA tournament. So, and they support the program in a big way. They have a great on-campus facility. It's a great school. It's one of the real prize schools in the country. It's a great school for students. The students who go there, my daughter goes there, they love it. Everybody loves Villanova. It's a beautiful campus. They love their basketball program. They support their basketball program. They want to win. So, and no, Jay Wright's not going to go back and coach the team again. That's all you hear all the time because Patino's doing it at 72. Jay's a lot younger than that, but he's not going to go back and coach in these days of NIL. He's not going to do it. He knows it's not for him, and he's smart enough to go do television. Omaha and St. John's in Providence, late Thursday night, 9 o'clock, 9:40. Sometime before 10. St. John's got a great first weekend. They got a very rugged second weekend. They got a great first weekend. They're going to have no trouble with this team. They're an 18.5-point favorite. I think they're going to have no trouble with the Arkansas-Kansas winner. Then let's see. Texas Tech's banged up. Let's see if they're there. If they are, they're a handful. And then the matchup you would expect to have to go through. And now we know we can put a face on that opponent. And I'll tell you something. It's a game that I would pay to see. St. John's against Florida. Do I think somebody will pick off Florida before that regional final? No. Do I think somebody will pick off St. John's before that regional final? No. Does St. John's have a puncher's chance in that game? Better than a puncher's chance. Better than a puncher's chance. Are they going to have to make some shots? Yes. You're not going to beat a team that caliber if they don't make some shots because they're going to make shots. And yeah, there's a kid there who's become a big star who was from Iona in Clayton. We know that. He's the leader of that 3-guard set, which is unbelievable. They're a great offensive team. They're a well-coached team. Hey, Florida's got it all. Can St. John's beat them? They can. Will they be favored to beat them? No, they won't. And they shouldn't be. But they got a shot. And I think they got a pretty good shot. But that game's a long way off. There's a lot of basketball to be played before we get to that game. UC San Diego is another game that everybody is picking. The problem with Michigan is dealing with the speed of the guards, who are erratic, and the size of the two big men. I don't have one big, I have two bigs. And one knows his way around the NCAA tournament very well. This game is a 5-12, and the line is 2. UC San Diego is getting not respect, they are getting overwhelming. Think about it. 8-9 game, Gonzaga's a 6-point favorite. 5-12 game, Michigan's a 2-point favorite. Duh. So they are in love play here without any question is Michigan because, I mean, no value in San Diego State asking them to beat Michigan and getting 2 points. Wilmington in the 14-3 gets Texas Tech. Texas Tech's got injuries. We know that. Let's see how banged up they are. They're going to get past this game, but let's see how banged up they are. Duke waits for the winner, and they're going to probably. I don't think it's going to be Mount St. Mary's, but it's not going to matter very much. They say Flag will play. They said it'll be okay. He's had 9 days. Vanderbilt plays St. Mary's. Toss-up game. San Diego State, UConn. San Diego State NC winner plays Ole Miss. Either team's going to have a great chance to beat Ole Miss. Grand Canyon goes against Maryland. If you're shopping for a 13-4, don't go there. Because the one thing is Maryland, their 5 starters are Ironmen. They don't have a lot of bench. So they're going to play their guys the whole game, and they're going to win that game. Norfolk gets Florida. Good night, the lights. And then Troy gets Kentucky. Kentucky's a 3. And to me, Kentucky is overseeded. But they're Kentucky. That's why they're overseeded. They started out the season, and they've gotten their level of efficiency and play has gone down all year. Yes, they've had injuries, but they're not. I mean, to me, Kentucky's closer to a 5 than it is a 3. And Clemson's closer to a 3 than it is a 5. I could see Kentucky getting picked off, not in this game, but I can see them getting picked off right after that. New Mexico, Marquette, great guard battle. We know that. Patino, Sasha. A lot of people think that Villanova might reach out to try and take Sasha Smart from Marquette. I don't think he'll leave. People tried to come get him last year. He wouldn't go. I think he found a home at Marquette. Remember, he was miserable at Texas. I think he's found a home at Marquette. I don't think he wants to move again. He can run his program out of Marquette and do just fine. Akron against Arizona. Akron wins a lot of games. Arizona is up and down, very up and down. Be careful with Arizona. Arizona's a 14-point favorite, but be careful with them. You know, they're strange. And then Oklahoma, UConn in the 8-9 game. And again, UConn is UConn. They're two-time defending champs. They have blown out everybody that anybody has seen in the NCAA tournament in recent memory. Every game you've seen is UConn blowing somebody out. So they're a 5-point favorite. You expect it because everyone believes it. Oklahoma can beat them. They're very well coached. Very, very well coached. They have a very good player. They could win this game. Gun to my head, I don't think they will, but they could win this game. Xavier, Texas winner gets Illinois. Either team is live against Illinois because Illinois is so up and down and banged up, and this lineup, that lineup, that lineup, this lineup. Illinois has looked like a top 5 team, then they've looked like a top 30 team. I mean, they're very hard to figure. Plus, they've been banged up all year. They've played 1,000 different lineups. And then Bryant, which is a tough little school. I mean, I saw Bryant play against St. John's this year. They have players. And that's why I bet on them in their conference final. They were playing on their home court, and they blew the team out. They won by 20. But they're getting Michigan State. And Michigan State was very upset that they didn't run the table in the Big Ten. They thought they were going to, and they really wanted to, and they were really upset they lost that Wisconsin game. So they're always motivated. And remember, Izzo is if you go just based on performance above seeding, Izzo is the number 1 tournament coach in history. His team performs of where you expect that seed to get to. Izzo's teams go farther than any coach in history. He is better above the seed than any coach in the history of the NCAA tournament. They don't lose in the first round, they're not going to lose this game anyway. Rick Majerus was the same way. He never lost in the first round. I think he lost in the first round one time in his whole career. Izzo, his team's always ready in the tournament. They played very well down the stretch of the season. They are a legitimate Final Four team. They are a team that could win the whole thing. There are, in my mind, if I exclude Alabama because of the injury, then I think there's 7 teams that could win the whole thing. And yes, St. John's is one of them. I think 7. I don't think more than that. And if Flair had not suffered an injury, I would put Duke 1. I am concerned by what I've seen from Auburn the last 2 weeks. They have lost 3 or 4. In the one game they won against Ole Miss, they did not play well. Is it fatigue? Is it something else? Is something going on there? I don't know, but I am, from a standpoint of them going to win a championship or go to the Final Four, I am concerned about them. They are well coached. He's a very good coach. But I'm concerned about them. I really am. And where they are. So now, see, if you go in the bracket, and this has always been a pet peeve of mine, and you're someone who people wait to see your Final Four, okay? You're on TV or you're on one of the networks or whatever it is, and you do college basketball, and you go out and you pick the 4-1 seeds. I mean, why bother? No one's going to even remember it. Number 2, you don't even have to look at the bracket to do that. I'm just taking the 4-1 seeds. That's great. First of all, the 4-1 seeds have only come in one time. One time. So you have to use a little more imagination than that and realize the odds on all 4-1 seeds getting there is very rare. Something happens, whether it's injury or the bounce of a ball or they weren't good enough or somebody else got hot. Hey, so I have always tried to use a formula. And, the most acclaim I ever got in the tournament, well, there were 2. One was once when I got the tournament right from 16 games in. The other one was Seton Hall, which was a 3 seed. No one's going to, laud you for picking a 1 seed. That's all there is to it. Now, do I think Duke's going to make the Final Four? Yes. I don't. With Alabama hurt, I don't even know who else to pick in that bracket. That bracket's so weak, it's ridiculous. I don't even see Duke getting threatened in that bracket. That bracket is so much weaker than the other 3 brackets. It's crazy. So to me, Duke's is going to make the Final Four. I think Houston's making the Final Four. I have respect for Tennessee. I don't have as much respect for Tennessee as I do for Houston. Houston would have gotten there last year except for the injury. They are a more complete team. Now, this year, if you make their defense last year 100, this year I make it 97. But their offense is a lot better, and they make threes. And they have guys who can score when they need a basket. That was not the case in the past. The other thing they used to do is just throw it up on the glass and go get it. Now they're going to do that anyway, but now they'll make baskets and they'll make threes. So on that side of the bracket, on the right side of the bracket, Duke top out of the East. That's in Newark. Eastern and Midwest out of Indianapolis. I think it's Duke and Houston on that side of the bracket, which means it's Duke or Houston in the final. Who wins that game? Let's wait on that. We got time for that. On the bottom, I think we're headed for a St. John's, Florida showdown in San Francisco. I think this thing is broken well for St. John's. They got a very good first 2 games. I've talked about the 3 2-game tournaments. They got a break in the second 2-game tournament, which gets you to the Final Four because Texas Tech is banged up. And according to their people, they will not be healthy throughout the tournament. That will impact them against St. John's. So the question is, can somebody on the other side of the bracket beat Florida? I don't think so. I think Florida will be standing there in a regional final in San Francisco if St. John's gets there. Now, I know it's a long trip to go to San Francisco. I'm sure a lot of the St. John fans will be flying, will be carring their way and driving their way into Providence this weekend. I don't know how many are going to follow them out to San Francisco. That's a long trek because after that, if they make it, you got to turn around, make another long trek. I know you'd love to make it. St. John's getting to the Final Four is still such, as Alan McGuire said. See, the thing about the NCAA tournament is it's really 3 different tournaments. It's a tournament for the teams that dream of winning 2 games and having those 2 games change their school and their coach's life. Getting to the Sweet 16, having all that national praise heaped on them for a couple of days before they go back out onto the court and try to get to the Final Four. Then for everybody else, Shangri-La is the Final Four. For most programs, getting to the Final Four is a destination. And then for that handful of programs, they thinking about one thing, and that's winning it. So there's 3 different distinct levels for the tournament. St. John's, there's going to be a real bandwagon jump for them if they get to the Sweet 16 and they have those 4 or 5 days to bask in those 2 wins. And now everyone's dreaming the dream of a trip to the Final Four and the Patino Magic and blah, blah, blah. And that will be great. And this city's behind them in a big way now. And then if they get to the Final Four, it's Shangri-La, and they got a week to bask in that before they try to see if they can dream the impossible dream against some very heavy weights. But they're going to have to be the real heavyweight to get there. But you know what? In front of our eyes this year, they've become a heavyweight. That team they have right now, that team with the defensive prowess that it has, and the toughness, and the cohesion, and the heart, and the coaching, and the preparation, they have become a powerhouse. They are legitimately one of the handful of best teams in this tournament. And they are worthy of that respect. Can they go to the Final Four? Yes, they can. Will they? That's what we get to watch. Do I think they're going to get picked off in the first 3 games? I do not. I think their effort, their defensive prowess will be enough to overcome their Achilles heel. Can they beat Florida without shooting the ball well? No. That night they'll have to shoot the ball. See, they wear teams down. They're a hard matchup. They play a very unusual kind of defense because they get to switch everything. When you have a guy like Zuby who can switch and play a guard and play him across the court for 15, 20 seconds, St. John's doesn't double. They'll trap to get a ball once in a while, but they don't double. They switch everything. They remind me of the Louisville teams that Denny Crum had. Not that Patino had, that Denny Crum had, that could switch everything. They have a lot of interchangeable players of the same size who can defend everything. And they are so well schooled in how they do it. They wear everybody down. They also have a player who is not nearly the best offensive player in the country, not by a long shot. But you know what he is? He's the best closer in the country. Nobody closes games better than Lewis does. Look at the Creighton game as an example. He couldn't buy a bucket. He also was intimidated by the big man. He had his shot blocked a couple of times. He had 2 points at the half. He finished with 29. He cleans up on the foul line late. He cleans up getting offensive rebounds and putbacks and dunks late. And he steps out and makes his shots when they need it. When they need a big shot, he makes it. When they needed him to step out and make a big trade the other night, he made it. He is not only a go-to guy, he is the single best closer in the country. Marquette has a very good one. Xavier has one right now that's red hot. There are some others of note. The kid at Florida, Clayton, is another one. But I think right now, Lewis, not the best shooter, not the best scorer, not the best offensive player, but I think the best late game closer in the country. And that's how St. John's continues to expand these leads. Their game, it's almost a model, off to a terrible start, missing shot after shot after shot, get down in the first 5 minutes, sometimes get down big like the Marquette game, get down 15 in the first couple of minutes, down 2 or 4 at half. Now they've played 5 minutes back and forth, second half. Now they get the lead. Remember, that St. John's Creighton game was 52-50. Next thing you know, it was 58-50. Next thing you know, it was a 16-point lead and the game was over. They have done that about 20 times this year. It's been a recipe they've used over and over and over again. Relentless defense, relentless offensive rebounding, and Lewis closing the game. And that's what they bring. Also, the preparation. Nobody coaches this tournament or prepares his team in this tournament any better than Pitino does. Somebody might be as good. Nobody's better. St. John's will be ready. They can beat Florida. Duke, Houston, St. John's. That's my 3 Final Four teams. Now I have the South, and I'm not picking Auburn. I don't like what I see. I'm off them. I could regret it. They're very talented. I just don't like what I see. I wanted to see them bounce back in that SEC, and they didn't. They didn't have it. Something's wrong with that team right now, and it's not a time where you want to have that happen. I'd be seriously worried about them right now. I really would. I'm still between 2 teams. I'm between Michigan State and Texas A&M for the Final Four. Those are my 2 teams, and I haven't decided yet. I decided on the other 3. I'm taking St. John's over Florida. I'm taking Houston. I'm taking Duke. And I'm still got to pick a team in the South. Now, as we get ready for all this craziness and all this action and you need a place to have some fun, you also you need all the information that you need, and you need a place to do it, and you need all the different promotions and all the different bells and whistles and everything else. And just remember, if you haven't created an account with Bet Rivers yet, you can get a second chance bonus bet if your first bet loses. Terms and conditions apply. So see the Bet Rivers app for full details. So go to Bet Rivers now and jump aboard and get ready for the tournament, for everything that comes with the tournament, all the thrills and excitement. Hey, if you like this sport or just like this event, hey, everybody you know fills out. People who can't tell you what city or can't even tell you the nickname, or anybody who ever played at a school will be filling out a bracket. Everybody fills out a bracket. It's become part of America. See, other sports have tried to duplicate. They've gone to brackets and they're like, why can't we create something like March Madness? Because there's only one March Madness. And March Madness is Thursday at noon until the last game finishes on Sunday night. That's March Madness. Then it's a basketball tournament. That's all it is. But for 4 days, it is a piece of Americana. It is something that grips this country from one end to the other and gets every nook and cranny involved. Schools from all over, from every shape and size, some that have been there 40 times and some that have never been there before. And everything from coaches who have been there 30 times to some that have never been there before. And you don't know where your next hero is coming from. And a favorite's going to get knocked out. There's going to be a buzzer beater and some wild shots and a hero made and a great storyline. And that's what it is. It's wall to wall basketball for 4 days. The plan was created to get more money from the networks. It was a money squeeze. Everything in sports is. To me, the tournament really begins at noon on Thursday. It always has. It always will. We'll be with you, as we said, all week. I still got to give you a fourth Final Four team: Duke, Houston, St. John's, and if I go by my regular recipe, I usually go lower than a 2 on my other bracket. I usually go 2 1s, a 2, and then a lower seed. That's usually my formula. But do I go 2 2s this year? Is this Izzo's swan song? Do the 2 grand old men meet? Imagine if it was St. John's and Michigan State in the Final Four, with those 2 grandmasters meeting for a chance to one of them coaching a championship game at this advanced stage of their careers. Fascinating. Izzo has been, he's kept doing it. So many of his contemporaries have run away from the sport now. He hasn't. And Pitino has run back to it and energized New York and St. John's in a way that people could only have dreamed about. They dreamt about it and it came true. Now let's see how real a dream is. We'll see you later.